Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's show is brought to you by First Seed Calendar. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is MacStories Editor-in-Chief, Federico Viticci. How's it going, Federico?
Hello, John. I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, having a good Friday. It's been
Nice.
another good week at MacStories. We had a bunch of different stuff on the site this week, so I thought let's just dive right into all these stories and other things and let everybody know what happened this week.
Let's do it. You've been a busy writing boy, John.
I have been.
Lots of like a diverse collection of stories.
I'm not
which I like.
sure. That's good. I'm not sure that if this is procrastination from doing my Mac OS review, or whether
I see. Okay.
or whether I'm just in a good writing groove. I'm going to pick the latter. I'm going to say I'm in a good writing groove.
Can be a little bit of both. There's no harm in that.
That's true. It's not one or the other necessarily. All right. To top things off, I want to start with the Halide 2.5 release, which adds a single feature, which is a macro mode. And what's kind of cool about this is that, I'm sure everybody who's listening has already heard about how you can do macro photography in the iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max, but this actually works all the way down to the iPhone 8. And the way that they're doing this is that they're doing something very similar to what Pixelmator Photo and Pro do, which is supersizing these images, doing a machine learning based super resolution that then crops the photo too. So I suppose you could say that that's cheating in a way. It's not a lens that's doing it. It's AI that's doing it. But if you're not on a 13 Pro or a 13 Pro Max, it's a way to get a similar effect through the magic of artificial intelligence. So that's how they're doing it. It also works with the 13 Pro and Pro Max. And there you also have the added advantage of having a lens that it works with. But I tried it, and it works super well. I have a story up on the site, but I also put a bunch more photos on the Club Discord for Club MacStories Plus and Club Premier members, which we've got a photography channel in there that's been very active and a lot of beautiful photos. I mean, it really puts my iPhone photography to shame, I have to say. But it's been a lot of fun watching and seeing everybody enjoy that new channel. And so I chimed in with some of my macro shots.
Yeah, I think it's clever that they are sort of bringing this feature to older iPhones that, because of like physics, they cannot have the same macro photography mode of the iPhone 13 Pro. And 13 macro is 13 Pro only, right? It's not on the regular 13.
That's
line.
right. It's just on the Pro and the Pro Max.
Just on the Pro. So I think it's cool that they're using software to sort of compensate for the lack of a physical lens that can do that. And the results seem pretty good. I mean, I think I can tell the difference like from the actual like real macro mode on the 13 Pro, but it's a very, very good approximation of that, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. And what's really neat too is that the focus dial that you have that appears when you go into macro mode changes on Halide. And it's down to a sub-millimeter focusing level so that as you slide your thumb along, focusing in on the very close-up shot, you're able to do very minute adjustments to make sure you get the thing in the foreground as sharp as possible. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
All right, Federico. I also went hands-on with the AirPods Find My support, which came out in an AirPods firmware update midweek. And it's always funny with AirPods. It can take a really long time.
Which reminds me, I got to update my AirPods.
I was going to say, do you know if you have it yet or not?
I have no idea. I'm doing it now. I'm doing it live
How are you
show.
doing it? Because there's no way to force it, is there? You just have to put them close together?
I guess I'm going to find out if they were updated.
All right. Because I guess that story came out sort of late one day. And the next morning I got up and I thought, I'm going to try this. And my AirPods had, at some point in the night, updated, and I was able to test it. And it works extraordinarily well. I was very impressed. I put my AirPods Pro under a cushion and blanket on the couch. I put it outside the back door on our back stoop, and I was able to locate it. You have to give it a little time, though, because it takes, I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 60 seconds for the iPhone to detect the Bluetooth signal from the AirPods. Maybe it's shorter with the Max because it has bigger antennas. I didn't try those, but it takes a little time. But once it does, it works very much like Find My without the arrows, letting you know if you're close or not to the AirPods. And then it uses haptic touch to kind of provide feedback that way too. So, definitely a good thing. I don't think it's not going to work if you left them in your car, probably in a closed garage, or you dropped them somewhere, 2 miles away or something. But if you do what I do, which is they slide out of your pocket and maybe they're in the cushions of your couch, or they're on a bedside table somewhere, or fell behind your bed or something like that, you should be able to find those, misplaced AirPods without too much trouble.
Let's see. So, yeah, I don't have the firmware on my AirPods Max. I don't have it. So, what am I supposed to do here? Just leave them plugged in next to my iPhone and hope for the best?
I think that's the only reliable way, is to have them somewhere nearby. And I think the night that mine updated, I had my phone and my AirPods Pro right next to each other on my bedside table. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a tip or a trick, but it's certainly how mine were able to update.
Oh, hopefully this will be done in time for next week's episode of Unwind.
All right.
John, you wrote about this Safari extension that I think is both genius and sad that it needs to exist today, this extension. So this is an extension for Safari 15. I believe it's desktop only, so you can only install it in Safari 15 for Mac. And you may wonder, but I don't have macOS Monterey. No, Safari 15 can also be installed on Big Sur. And I want to say Catalina as well. You can, in fact, I do have Safari 15 on my Mac Mini running Big Sur because I'm not on the beta track with this machine, but I do have Safari 15. And, you may have gotten, a sense from this show and from App Stories and from our other properties that we are not huge fans of the Safari 15 redesign. But one of the most outrageous, I think, design issue with the new browser is how the active tab state is displayed in the UI.
Right.
Meaning it's very difficult and it's quite challenging to tell multiple tabs apart from each other in terms of which one is the active one, which one is the selected tab, and which one is a tab open but not selected. Apple is using these different shades of light gray to indicate selection state. And as I pointed out in my iPadOS 15 review, that is such a bad design and it's not accessible at all. I can only imagine for users who have varying degrees of visual impairments how this can be a quite tricky design to understand. But fear not, because, of course, third-party developers are unfortunately coming in and fixing, what Apple did with Safari 15. And in this case, we have Active Tab. So Active Tab is a very simple Safari extension that, and again, I'm sorry that this needs to exist, but it is what it is. This puts a colored line indicator underneath the Active Tab. So you're literally looking at an extension that draws a line, a colored line. You can choose from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10 colors. You can choose the thickness of the line in pixels, and that's all there is to it.
That's all it does.
It draws a colored line underneath the current tab.
Yes, it does. And it draws it right on top of the content on the web page. So, I mean, the one thing where this doesn't work super well is if you pick a color and then you happen to visit a website with that color
right
as the background or something, it's problematic. It doesn't have the smarts to adjust to that sort of thing. But especially, I think the tabs are especially hard to distinguish in dark mode. And so if you pick something like bright yellow, it works really well to tell which tab is open. So that's what I've been doing. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to stick with this at first, but I think I'm going to, because it does help, especially in dark mode.
This is Active Tab, one of our most popular, I think our most popular story from the past week on
Oh, really?
MacStories.
Yeah.
Hundreds of likes and shares on Twitter. So
Yeah, it's a $2 app, a $2
yeah.
extension. So go check it out on the Mac App Store.
Yeah. So as this episode comes out, I believe the Apple Watch Series 7 pre-orders should be up for availability starting next week. So next Friday, October 15th, the Apple Watch Series 7 will come out. Today, you can place your order online. I don't know what to think about this. The Apple Watch was announced without a release date. Now, some rumors are saying that this thing is going to be supply constrained. And so I guess if you really want an Apple Watch, make sure to put in your order online. Otherwise, you may not be able to get one. I don't know, but it's coming next week.
Yeah, it'll be here and it'll be in stores. So we'll have to see what the availability is like once they're actually out. The other story we had this week, Federico, is it's an interesting story. Apparently, Google Amp links just disappeared from iOS and iPadOS 15. So if you were in Safari, this is a Safari thing. If you did a Google search and you searched for any content on a site that uses AMP links, and I use The Verge and Polygon as my examples because both of those Vox properties use AMP, that you would just get the canonical link back. And it seemed strange. It seemed like maybe a reaction by Google to the fact that AMP extensions in Safari have become so popular, because there's a whole bunch of them that we talked about this past week on App Stories, including Overamped and Amplosion by Christian Selig, that redirect AMP links to the canonical link. And there was speculation early in the day that maybe Google had caved and stopped serving AMP links to Safari 15 because you could still see them if you were on 14. Turns out that was not the case. At least Google says it's not the case. Google is saying that it's a bug and they're going to, quote, fix it. To me, the bug is the fix because I'm not a fan of AMP links, nor are you.
Please
and
keep the bug.
Yeah, I wish the bug would persist, but I haven't checked today. But as of Wednesday when we wrote the story, the news was that they were working on fixing the bug and bringing AMP back for all the AMP fans out there.
Yeah, so unfortunate bug fix, I guess.
Right.
John, speaking of now, I want to switch to the club. MacStories Weekly, fun issue of the newsletter this week. You wrote about a robot.
I did. I wrote about the Roomba J7. And I'm I guess I'm a late comer to the Roomba. The Roomba's been around obviously forever, and there are a million different models. It's actually, I found, very confusing to decide which one to buy. But I bought one called the J7 because it has some particular features that I thought would be good for cleaning our house in particular. So, and I read a bunch of reviews, ordered the Roomba J7, and talk about what the experience has been like. Because I've had it now for about 3 weeks. About 3 weeks ago is when it showed up. I think it's downstairs right now cleaning my kitchen as we speak. So that was fun to write about. How about you, Federico? What did you do?
I wrote about my journey into a realization. And the realization would be I needed to split up my task manager into two utilities. More specifically, I'm talking about how I took those personal reminders, things like water the plants and feed the dogs or call my mom.
Right.
I took those personal things out of my task manager and I put them into Due. Now, this is something that's been bothering me for a while. The fact that when I look at Todoist, which is my task manager, I look at Todoist on my home screen and I think of work. And I always thought it was silly that these personal, non-work related reminders were also sitting in Todoist. And so I also realized, I keep forgetting about these things and I need a tool that helps me not forget about them. So I did this column where it's like half of like a story about like why I needed to do this. And the other half is a shortcut that I put together called Remind Me that simplifies the process of creating these reminders in Due with some nice options for iOS 15. So go check it out. It's in MacStories Weekly. It's a fun story. That's like, it's not a shortcut essentials. It's not an extension. It's a hybrid, and it's exactly the kind of thing that I can do for MacStories Weekly, where I can try all sorts of different formats and stories. So this was fun.
Very nice. Yeah, I think it's really, I think that is a very good approach to take the personal stuff out of your main work task manager. And I slip back into it just, I think, naturally by accident from time to time. Like right now, I probably need this column because right now I've got too much personal stuff in Todoist and I really should get it out of there. I use reminders to a degree for this sort of thing, like grocery lists and that sort of thing. But I haven't used do regularly for a while. And I could probably stand to put a few of the things I have in Todoist that are more of a personal nature and recurring into that app. We also had, Federico, this week, we had a really nice reader setup. We've been continuing to get a lot of great reader setup submissions from our Club MacStories Plus Discord. There's a lot of interesting work setups that people have there. And we have an episode of MacStories Unplugged where you and I talked a little bit about recommending hardware to friends and family, as well as speculated about what we think we might see yet this year from Apple in terms of an event and hardware. And we talked to a little bit about shortcuts and some of our frustrations and an idea that you had for something for the club related to your Apple Frames shortcuts. So got that as well. All right, Federico, the other thing we had this week was App Stories, and we talked all about Safari extensions. That's proven to be a really popular episode because I had written about it the week before, and then we sat down and talked a little more in depth about what each of them do and what you can accomplish with Safari shortcuts. And I've been using them a lot. I don't know about you. I've got at least, 6 or 7 that I'm using regularly right now, and they've been really nice.
Yeah. It's fun to use them. It's fun to discover them. It's one of my favorite additions this year. So, it's a fun episode.
All right, Federico, let me tell you about our sponsor for this episode of MacStories Unwind and all of MacStories this week, and that is First Seed Calendar, which is a calendar app on all of Apple's platforms that anyone with a busy schedule is going to appreciate. The app never wastes your time. Unlike most other calendar apps, event names are suggested after typing just a few characters, allowing you to autocomplete events quickly and efficiently. The app also features something that's unusual, I think, for a calendar app, which is more than 20 home screen widgets. So you can really precisely dial in exactly the widget system you want at the right size for your home screen. And it's continuously updated with a whole bunch of the latest technologies, including just most recently an iPad version that includes an XL widget and time-sensitive notifications that allow you to let your alerts break through any focus modes if you want that. In addition, there's a long set of the pro features you'd expect, things like calendar sets, shortcuts integration, event templates, and support for conferencing services like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and WebEx. Managing your calendar doesn't have to be complicated. Take control of your schedule today with First Seed Calendar. You can learn more at firstseed.io/MacStories or go straight to the App Store and download First Seed Calendar for the iPhone, iPad, and Mac today. Again, that URL is firstseed.io/MacStories to get started with this great calendar app today. Our thanks to First Seed for their support of the show. Federico, before we do our picks for the week, I wanted to mention that this is the week that Crossy Road is coming out on. It is out on Apple Arcade, because I think we talked about this either a week or two ago. I forget when exactly it was the coming soon title, but it's out. So if you want to revisit Crossy Road, this is the way to do it. You can do it on Apple Arcade now.
Nice.
They're doing something with Transformers too, and I have no idea what this is.
So. Oh, it's a battle royale type game. I think.
It's not out yet. It's coming soon, but I think it's a little similar to kind of the battle thing they did with Lego, and there's some other titles like this on arcade now. Okay, Federico, let's dive into these Unwind picks for the week. Do you have something for me today?
Unfortunately, I do not, but I will come back next week with an obvious pick.
All right.
But this week, I mean, I guess I could mention.
I know what your pick is next week.
Yeah,
already.
okay, we'll talk about it next week. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, let me give you one then, because this is one that I got from our Club Mac Stories Discord. Because, and you mentioned it to me. You said, did you see that Rob Knight had mentioned Hot Wheels Unleashed in the Discord? And I hadn't at the time, and I went and looked. I didn't realize what this game was. And I when I first heard about it, I thought Hot Wheels Unleashed sounds like a little kid's game or something. Maybe it's not for me, but it's actually a lot of fun because I'm not a big fan of racing video games or car video games. I think the problem a lot of them have is they try to be so hyper realistic that it's great if you're a big fan of cars and driving, but if you're not, it can be a little too technical. And I find a lot of games to be that way, but I am a fan of racing around a track. And I've enjoyed games in the past, like Burnout, for instance, where the whole notion is you're supposed to crash a lot, which is fun because I'm good at crashing my car in video games. And Hot Wheels Unleashed reminds me a little bit of Burnout without the crashing, in the sense that you've got these cars that are in fact replicas of decades old Hot Wheels toys, the die-cast metal toys, ones that I had when I was a kid, and you race them around the plastic tracks that Hot Wheels has had. And you can modify the tracks. You can collect a bunch of different cars and then race them in these different environments where the tracks are set up. You know, there's an environment that's a basement and another environment that's like a skateboarding park and a whole bunch of other ones. Yeah, a whole bunch of other ones. And each car has its own characteristics in terms of things like acceleration and control and all of those things. And the controls, I think it's the controls that remind me of Burnout because they're relatively simple. It's, use one of the triggers for accelerating. You've got a braking button, you've got a boost button, and then you use the thumbstick to steer. And I just fired this up last Friday when I was really tired and just needed a break and needed to do something to kind of relax for a little while. And I fired this game up and it was so much fun. I had a great time, and they're doing DLCs for it, so you can continue to get more cars and more tracks and things if you kind of exhaust what's available in the game. But it's a pretty it's a pretty deep game. I mean, I haven't gotten super far into it yet, but I feel like I'm going to have lots of hours of fun with it. And then if I run out of things to do, I may pick up a DLC or two because I think they're like $10 each. They're not too bad. So I really like the game.
Very nice. That looks very fun. I watched some gameplay videos a couple of nights ago. It looks very fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a good time. So it definitely one that's easy to pick up too. And you can, you can set it to be more difficult or easier. So, whatever challenge you're up for, you can kind of set it up accordingly. All right, Federico, I think that's it for this week on Mac Stories. You can find the two of us over at MacStories.net. Federico is over on Twitter and Instagram too. He's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees on both. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.